All right, so let's go back and talk about the Qing Dynasty. Let me reset my timer so that I know how much time I have. Okay, so the Qing Dynasty is going to actually make an appearance for the next three of our time periods. Period 4, 5, and 6. They're going to last from 1644 to 1911 and are going to encompass a lot of territory. All right, so I mentioned previously that the Manchus were pastoral nomads who lived north of the Great Wall. They go and establish control over Korea and Mongolia before they finally make it to China in 1644. The Manchus who established the Qing Dynasty were even more racist towards the Chinese than the Mongols were. The Mongols at least just thought that the Chinese were incompetent and didn't take it as far. But what the Manchus are going to end up doing, they are going to forbid intermarriage between Manchus and Chinese. Chinese were not allowed to study the Manchu language. They were not allowed to travel to Manchuria. They had to dress differently, and they also forced ethnic Han Chinese to adopt a hairstyle called a queue, which is the very long braided ponytail that you will see some Chinese men with. And that's all started, like I said, because of the king, and they wanted to make sure that they could distinguish between themselves and different groups of Chinese. And so these are some of the things that they instituted. Just like previous Chinese emperors, the king considered their empires to be like semi-divine, so they called themselves sons of heaven. They had hundreds of concubines and eunuch servants who would serve in the palace. Anything that they wore, none of the rest of the population could have. They took it even a step further. Like any characters that was found in the name of the emperor, nobody else could have. And then they institute, and it's been around, but really make use of the kowtow, which is bowing whenever you see the emperor. And it's a series of 3 bows and 9 head knocks that you would have to perform whenever you saw the emperor. Scholar bureaucrats, again, are making a resurgence, and they are super, super important to the way China operates with their bureaucracy. These are the people who run the government on a day-to-day basis. So this is the bureaucracy of China. These are the people who are in charge. These are the people who, in order to run the government, had to take the civil service exam, which was history, literature, and like all these Confucian classics. Again, this is nothing new, but just to kind of go back over it, there are 3 different levels. So like you could be like a district bureaucrat, which is a small area, a provincial bureaucrat, or then you could be a metropolitan. Only 300 were allowed to be at the very high levels of the metropolitan. So you had to bring everything and take the test forever. It was 3 days, and you couldn't leave the room. And there was lots of cheating and bribing and corruption. And so they would search people before they went in to take their test. Just to give you an idea of how competitive it was, you only had 200 or 20,000 positions for over 1 million people who were actually qualified for those positions. So you have 1 million people competing for 20,000 jobs. So it was a very, very competitive job market, which, like I said, that's why there was corruption and cheating. Theoretically, it's open to everybody, but, like we've talked about before, it's going to favor the wealthy because they are the ones who can actually afford tutors and all that kind of stuff. Again, this is nothing new for China, but we have the concepts of filial piety, which is the duty of a child to the parent or the individual to the emperor. It's, again, a reinforcement of Confucian ideology and the 5 relationships. The eldest son is favored, which is why you would have a lot of infanticide in China, killing a baby if it was a girl because you wanted to carry everything on through the son. Along the same lines, this is why men received preferential status. Widows were not strongly encouraged to remarry. In fact, they wanted you to just stay a widow. And if you were a good widow, you could get like this beautiful arch built to show everyone how wonderful you were and dutiful you were to your country. Divorce was a thing, but it was only instituted by men. So grounds for divorce included anything from infidelity to talking too much. Fun fact, you're just not going to have to know that for your test, but if you lived in China back then and you talked too much, you could find yourself divorced and then your life would be ruined because no one would want to marry you. Again, this is brought back by the Ming, and it started in the Song Dynasty, which was the foot binding. Really, it was just the higher classes in society that did this, but commoners would occasionally bind the feet of some girls, especially if they were really pretty, to enhance marriage prospects. Like maybe you can marry your daughter off to somebody, wealthy or something like that. China does experience a huge population growth toward the end of the early modern period. It goes up and then it goes down. But the real reason why the population is increasing is because you have new, more nutritious foods that are coming in from the Americas. And so anytime you have, more food, you get more people. And especially when you have a new variety of food, that's going to cause population growth. I mentioned earlier they are trading silk, porcelain, tea, dishes. China is not importing a lot because they feel that they don't need anything from other people. But what they do buy, they're paying for with silver from the Americas. And China is pretty much the one country that is buying up lots and lots of silver. And when in a couple weeks, I will have a video on silver that talks about some of this stuff. Again, Chinese merchants are still trading in Southeast Asia. They're dealing almost exclusively with the Dutch, which is the one group that everybody likes to trade with. Technological developments kind of stagnate during the Ming and the Qing dynasties. They're really going to start to suppress technological advancements, fearing that instability is going to be a result of that. And then it just like throws Confucian values out the window, and then it's just mass chaos. So this is just here to kind of show you the classes that existed in Chinese society. You had the privileged working and lower classes, like your scholar bureaucrats, your peasants, your merchants, like those kind of people. Jesuits do try to start coming in to China to spread Christianity. They're bringing in technology more than really trying to convert them. The Jesuits in particular are trying to blend Christianity and Confucianism to try to get people to convert. Ultimately, China views Christians as this really big threat to the empire, so they ban Christianity and end up expelling all foreigners. I have a little bit to talk on with Japan, so that will be the next podcast.